Hey guys, today's video is all about helping you pick the right team and the right club for your youth soccer player. So let's go. So this is a question I get pretty regularly, and it comes usually from parents who are maybe not happy with the club that they're at or the team that they're on, and they're thinking about changing or switching to a different club. Or I'll get a question like, how do I decide? I live in a particular area and there's a couple clubs in my region and I don't know which one to choose. So what I wanted to do was put together a list of what I think are the most important things to consider when you're making that decision for your player. So for me, the most important thing is the coach. It doesn't have to be the best soccer coach in the world, but they can't be terrible. There's nothing that will destroy your player's soccer experience more than a bad coach. So how do you know if the coach is any good? You can ask other parents. You can have your player come to a session to try it out. You could watch a game, see how they react. Are they screaming at kids? What happens when things go wrong? Are they encouraging to their players? Watch the way that their teams play. Do they just kick the ball and try to run all over the field? Do they look organized? Are they trying to play a possession-based game? Are the kids looking like they're learning? Are they in the right positions? Does it look like a cohesive unit? Do the players seem engaged? Do they seem happy? Do they seem to be enjoying themselves? If your youth soccer player comes home from practice happy and wanting to go back, that's how you know you have the right coach. Also, what is the experience level of that particular coach, especially at the age that you're at? A lot of coaches who are very successful with older kids, even college coaches, struggle with a team of 9-year-olds. So there's some team-specific things that you need to consider when making the decision on what club and what team you're going to go to. The first is how competitive that team is. So travel teams, soccer teams, there's a huge variety in terms of how competitive they are. And a good rule of thumb is you really don't want your son or daughter to be the best player by a mile on the team or the worst player by a mile on that team, because if that's the case, they're probably on the wrong team. You want your player to be surrounded by kids of similar or maybe just a little bit higher skill level to kind of push them. But you certainly don't want them to be so much more skilled than everybody else on the team that they're not getting anything out of the practice sessions. Also, on the other hand, you don't want them to be so far behind everybody else on the team, because that is going to cause them to really hate their experience. Sort of along those same lines, how committed are the rest of the families on that team to soccer? And how committed is your player? For example, if you are on a team and your player is coming to every session, wants to do extra stuff, working on their skills at home, is just really into it, but you have maybe most of the other team who plays multiple sports, who doesn't show up to every practice, stuff like that, that's a big consideration. Now, part of that can be what type of a league they're in. So are they playing in a high level league like MLS Next? Are they playing EDP? Are they playing ECNL? Is it one of the top teams potentially at that age group at the club? You don't want a mismatch of your player's commitment and that team's overall commitment. So for example, if your player is playing MLS Next, on the boys' side, they actually can't play high school soccer. Some of these leagues, you have to travel hours for games. Is that something that the entire team is committed to? Is it something that your player is committed to? Does your player get along with the players on the team? Is it a good group of players that you see your player growing with and developing with? How important is it that they have friends on the team? Is it the type of team that has players that are encouraging, that will push your player to get better? Or do you have a bunch of jerks on the team? So let's talk about some things that are specific to your player. We talked about this a little bit in terms of the team, but what level of commitment does your player have to soccer? Do they play multiple other sports? Do they want to play high school soccer? And realistically, what level is your player at? I see a lot of players who really are probably more recreational players who are trying to get into travel teams. And you got to be really careful because there are costs associated, which we'll talk about in a minute. And there's no reason to be paying a ton of money if your kid is just not at the level right now. Same thing with travel. Are you willing to travel 2 or 3 hours on a team, or does your family have a lot of other stuff going on? Do you have multiple kids in multiple sports? So what about the specific club should you be thinking about in terms of making decisions? So first of all, is there a clear leadership structure? Do they have a vision for how they want to develop players? Is there a club-wide style of play, a club-wide culture? Do they have a technical director? Do they have boys and girls directors? All of this are just other people and resources that your player or you can go to for help. Does the club offer technical specific axillary training or just additional training on the side? Does the club have a set way of doing evaluations every single year? How does the club communicate to the parents? Is there a newsletter? Do they send out emails? Are there general meetings? What kind of facilities do they have? Do they have a turf field? Do they have nice grass fields? Are the fields lined out? For the very youngest players, do they have fields with build-out lines? What do they do in the winter? Do they have indoor facilities? Do they have an indoor program? Do they play futsal? Do they encourage futsal? Is there a clear player pathway that if your son or daughter isn't on the first team, that potentially could happen 2-3 years down the line? What is the club's reputation in the community? Lastly, guys, what's the cost of the program? So many youth soccer clubs, they charge just crazy amounts of money. And you have to ask yourself, am I getting what I'm paying for? Am I getting professional coaching? Am I getting competitive games? Is this something that is actually worth the money? One thing you'll see, guys, is some clubs, and it's a big scam, they stop playing recreational soccer after like U8. And so from U9 to whenever, all they have are quote unquote travel teams. And the coaches are still parents. It's really a scam. So you got to be careful that first the costs are right and that you're getting what you're paying for. So guys, these are all some of the things that you have to consider when you're choosing a team, choosing a club for your player. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please put them in the comment section. Any questions, or just reach out to me privately. And if you have any other suggestions on what you should think about when choosing a team or a club, go ahead and put that down there as well.